What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome. Oh, Tuesday night is here again. That means another Dynasty Points episode, a special Dynasty Points episode, the earliest we've ever taken a look at a rookie class ever. And we figured, well, it would be fitting to bring in one of the GOATs. Before we do that, we want to again thank everybody for making Dynasty Points the most consumed content on the Fantasy Points Network. As a whole, collectively, you guys are here every single week. Every episode we put out, whether it be on YouTube, which if you're watching, hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Let us know what you think, good or bad. We can take it. Or on the podcast landscape, again, still number one. You guys can't get enough Dynasty content. And honestly, we have a ton to provide coming up, especially as we turn from in season, as we're getting into the playoffs, to obviously the rookie content. Today, big day for us. So it's an even bigger day for you guys to be able to, again, hit like, subscribe. Our families need Timbits and Tim Hortons, all the things that make our families thrive here in Canada anyway, as we get to the holiday season. Every time you guys hit like and subscribe, it moves us a little bit closer to providing Tim Hortons gift cards for all of our loved ones. And we appreciate all you guys for that. That being said, no Ryan. We have Lucas Gilbert joining me as always, Jacob Sanderson as always. No Ryan, but instead we figured, let's get one of the big fish. And we've actually reeled in the biggest fish, Mr. COO, the Fantasy Points Data Suite creator, really, the man behind all of the draft coverage, really, and no one's whose rookie take I trust more since I have been welcomed here at Fantasy Points. It is Big Guns himself, the Detroit Lion apologist. It's Brett Whitefield joining us for the first time, maybe the last time. We'll find out how he goes. Brett, we appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm just glad to get to talk to you guys when it's not draft night. You usually wait till the day of, and we don't get to do this beforehand. So,
right.
Are you like what, 20%, 200%, 7,000% less exhausted than you are on like day 3 of the draft right now?
Yes, very much so. Although I am an old man, and we'll see how this goes.
Right. When I mentioned to Brett that our listeners keep asking us to go 3 to 3.5 hours, he was like, no.
Not doing that.
I was like, don't worry. We don't want to do that either. With that being said, it's important to point out that it is really early, right? We are 5-6 months even away from people doing their rookie drafts. Because why we wanted to point out, this is the earliest look. These are going to change for all of us. This is not what Brett's final board is going to look like. This is fantasy focused more than it is real football focused. Obviously, this is a fantasy football show. Real football does matter. Don't get us wrong. But on this here program, this is going to be a breakdown of where Brett, as of right now, you have some people ranked. There are some players not on this list because as you've sent me, you think that they are going back to school, ergo they're not on this list for now. We can talk about them at the end. But before that, let's talk a little bit about the process, how you get to where you're going ultimately, and how you start looking at the draft class itself.
Yeah, great question on the process. So I have a numeric scoring system. And basically what that looks like is it's a weighted system. I've got 4 main buckets. The biggest bucket being film for me, obviously. Production models and analytics are another bucket, and they're all weighted accordingly. But the film bucket is the biggest bucket. It has, so with each position and each archetype for the position, I have all these different benchmarks I like to see hit. And I kind of, as I literally watch every snap of every player I scout, by the way. So I will not write a scouting report on a player I didn't watch every single snap of their college career. And I have, certain criteria of how often I want to see things, repeatable skill sets, things of that nature. And then all that gets weighted into a score that's 0 to 100. And typically, year to year, I have between 17 and 18 first round grades. Obviously, the last few years, we've had a ton of good wide receiver prospects. This year might be a little light there at wide receiver, but at the end of the day, I've adjusted what we're doing tonight for some fantasy dialogue and not just real football. So this is fun.
I find it funny, you and I, when we talk, it's usually I'm talking about fantasy, you're talking about real, and we'll figure that out halfway through the conversation we're even having.
So true.
At least we have that off rip that is the direction that we're going today. With that being said, we have a couple of Discord questions that I think are really good. If you bear with me, I am just going to look for them now. As we pull that up, I just want to say, do you have a lean on where this class sits overall? Like, I know you mentioned that it's not so good for offensive line, which is not great. That's not great. But where does it sit as an overall class for you?
Yeah, if you're a New England Patriots fan, you're screwed. I don't know how their O-line's getting better next year without heavy free agency investment. But yeah, I think this class, I think it's fine. It's mostly, I think the studs are all on the defensive side of the ball for the most part. So I think that's a little tricky. I think we're light in the pants at wide receiver and really light at offensive line. I think quarterback's pretty light too. I got really one guy that I love, and everyone else is a big wild card for me. And then it's loaded at running back, loaded at tight end. I think, as far as the fantasy landscape goes, this is a landscape changing draft at the running back position. I think you find 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe, day one starters in this draft. Obviously, there's not going to be that many opportunities in the league, but eventually those guys turn into starters, in my opinion. So I think it's a really good draft for running backs. And then tight ends. If you play in a tight end premium dynasty league, you want a lot of picks in the second round, a lot of picks in the early third. There's a lot of good tight ends in this class. A lot of good pass catching tight ends in this class.
I love that. That actually ties into a couple of the questions. We can hit that real quick here from T-Rex in the Fantasy Points Discord, which you can go and get at fantasypoints.com. That link is obviously going to be down in the description if you want to hop in there. All the Dynasty content is free as of right now, which is just a massive steal, especially now that we are diving into Dynasty Rookie content. We are teaming up with the Josh Chevaliers and the college football side to do some mock drafts that we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing mock drafts with subscribers, ton of Dynasty content along the way, including league startups. There are 5 Fantasy Points listener leagues that we got done in a week and a half before the season started because we kept getting asked to do them. They have some fun giveaways involved. We give away subscriptions to winners, etc. If you want in there, fantasypoints.com, that link in the description. Not going to want to miss out on that. With that being said, subscriber T-Rex says, Brett, how do you view Jeanty as a prospect in comparison to the top RBs the last couple of years, Bijan, Brees, and Gibbs? We don't have to give the whole thing away, seeing as how we're going to talk about him fairly early, obviously, but just a generalized statement.
Yeah, he's in the mix, right there with those guys. He's not going to score as high as Bijan did for me. I'll just say that right off the rip, but he'll be in the mix with those other guys listed.
Better than Brees, perhaps. Better than Gibbs, maybe.
Probably right around, maybe just under Gibbs as well. I don't have an official score on him yet, but I think that's where he's going to come in based on what I've seen so far. I think Gibbs was my second highest graded running back ever. So, that's like a 10-year sample. So, even though he was the second running back in that class, he was, of the near generational variety for me. So,
that's reflected by the NFL, right? Like he went 12th, I think 12th overall. And you look at almost any other class recently, post Saquon, I think that's the second highest any other running back has gone, right? Otherwise, it was 2019. Jacobs was a late first, Clyde was a late first, Brees was a second. So I think that holds up for sure.
And to think he was like a McRib away, right, from hitting 200, and people were vastly concerned. The man just needed a McRib before weigh-in, guys. It's just unbelievable how good he is. Brian, we're going to get to your question when we talk about this player, because I feel like it's ties into the player. We have CMS Jumpman. What do we do with picks in this class? Move up, or are we trying to get out into 26 just like it was a couple of years ago? There was a couple of years ago the Kenny Pickett draft. It was either move up or get out. How do we feel about this draft? I feel like I personally am leaning towards moving up / getting back, maybe not out. I feel like I want a lot of second round picks in this draft more than I want a lot of mid firsts. Brett, what's your initial takeaway with the class in general?
Yeah, without giving away my tiers here, I think if you can get a top 2 pick, that's great. If you land somewhere in that 3 to 9 range, it might be worth moving back a couple spots to pick up a second. Like if you land at like 5, you're going to get a player at 9 that's pretty much as good at 5. And I think moving back to 9, picking up a second is going to be very valuable, especially in those tight end premium leagues where you might be getting a very good tight end in the second round that can catch a lot of balls. So, yeah, you guys would know better. If I were to tell you that this draft class will have 3 first-round running backs and Shedeur Sanders, you're going to want to get one of those 4 guys probably, right? I mean, that's pretty good draft capital for running back. So you guys tell me if that's the case, if that's what happens, where do you want to be?
I mean, who knows if that's – I mean, my perception of this class has been that it's going to kind of come down to, like, because the running back class is awesome, right? And then where I want to be, to me, kind of depends on what does the NFL do? Because I'm not 100% sure if the NFL is going to look at this. Like, I think every organization is different. What we've seen over the last few years is that a lot of the times the teams we want to draft the running backs don't. The teams that have running backs do, because there's kind of a split in the NFL where some teams seem to really value the position. Some teams don't really value the position. So often the teams that look like they have the most glaring need for running back, those are the teams that don't value the position very highly. So those aren't the teams that are going to be spending the first round pick on the running back. Teams that do spend the first round pick on the running back might be the teams that already have a pretty solid running back in place, like we saw with the Lions and the Falcons a couple years ago. So I think the curiosity to me is like, how many teams are there in the NFL that are willing to spend a round 1 or round 2 pick on a running back? Because that number might be lower than there are running backs who are in a vacuum deserving of a round 1 or round 2 pick. And then I think if the number's high, right, if we get, like you said, 3 first round running backs, a few more second round running backs, some of them hopefully in good spots, like then that becomes really, really interesting to be drafting in the early to mid first. If what happens is kind of what I somewhat suspect to happen, which is that we get a lot of like very overqualified 3rd and 4th round pick running backs, then I don't think that those guys are going to be sexy enough for dynasty managers to want to bet on them in the mid to late first. But I probably want to be attacking a lot of them in the mid to late second, because as we've seen recently, these running backs that are drafted in the 3rd, 4th round, 5th round even, are getting opportunities earlier than they used to, because a lot of them are going to teams that value the position a little bit lower. So they're not like guys like a Tracy, guys like an Irving, Chase. These guys are actually getting opportunities. Teams didn't used to draft 4th or 5th round running backs to be part of their plans. They used to be pure backups. Now they're making these players far more part of the actual plan of attack, and they're getting those opportunities. So that's kind of how I view it. Is I don't know yet what tier I want to be in, because I want to find out how high the NFL is going to draft these running backs.
Well said.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucas.
I was going to say, I think right now I want to be in the top 6. I feel like if you're sitting in the top 6, you're going to be in a really good position to either land one of the, let's just say there's 3 first-round running backs. One of those 3 first-round running backs, I'm going to go say there's probably going to be at least 2 first-round quarterbacks, and then there's 1 wide receiver that I at least hold in a higher regard than any other wide receiver. So if you're sitting inside those top 6, I mean, give me the 106, and I'm going to be happy with any of them that are falling to that spot. If there's a position that you're just like really dire on, then maybe start to, creep up a little bit higher. Like say like you feel like you're a running back away and you're sitting there at like the 107 or something, try to sneak it up to like 104, get into a good position there to get whichever running back is left from that standpoint. If you really need a wide receiver, I don't think the wide receiver I'm alluding to is going to go in the top 4 picks right now, but we'll see how it goes with landing spot. But I think a lot of it's going to be maneuvering around somewhere between 104 to 106. And that's really going to be the prime spot. If you're not getting there, then I'm comfortable falling back into like the mid second, unless we just see like an unexpected run on quarterbacks. And then I might start moving back up into the top of the second round to get, those quarterbacks who are going in the first round, but nobody's really that excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be a scenario. Brian mentioned it in the chat. Quarterback draft capital is going to affect a lot of what happens in Superflex rookie drafts. Superflex obviously being our primary source of play. We play in mostly Superflex start 10, tight end premiums because we're not lunatics with the start 13 and start 14, 3-point tight end premium, start 2 tight ends. You guys are all degenerates. This would be a good draft for you guys to play the 2 tight ends. Great draft for you guys, the way it's shaping out. But I think that draft capital and running backs has changed a lot, like Jacob had mentioned. But to me, this draft class looks like one of those ones. If you got a running back that is kind of broken out this year, like a Chase Brown or a Tyrone Tracy Jr., etc., be worried a little bit, at least a little bit, because this is peak trade every running back that aren't the top 3 season and get the best package you can get in Dynasty. This is just like a classic season's kind of over. If it's done for you and you don't have trade deadlines, it's time to move those guys. This is a draft class that can legitimately come in and do serious damage to the running backs in the 12 to 19 spot in Dynasty rankings. You can really come and mess some stuff up. And like Jacob said, the teams that we want to draft running backs, they're going to Dallas. They're not going to Dallas.
They got Rico Dowdle, man. He's a freaking stud.
That's what Jacob was saying this whole time, and the Zeke.
That's not quite what I was saying. That's not quite what I was saying.
I was just in comparison to he and Zeke.
Yes,
we knew who was
he's
the
not
guy.
as bad as you guys think he is. Was basically my take. And Zeke, I think it's
jokes aside, he's looked damn good the last 3 weeks. Jokes aside,
yes,
he looks very good.
He's definitely I don't know if he's an NFL starting running back, but people were talking like he wasn't, like he was like a community college running back in the offseason, and like he's clearly an NFL player. Like he's clearly sure. Like at the very least he's a quality NFL backup running back.
See, he is at least CFL all-star quality.
Come on.
Okay.
Trent Richardson averaged over 5 yards per carry in his one CFL season, and that scarred me on the quality of CFL football for a while.
Ricky Williams came out of retirement to also play for the Argonauts and almost rushed for 1,000 yards, playing half the time. So, shout out Ricky Williams, man. Toronto Argonaut legend. CFL champion Toronto Argonauts. Suck it, Bombers. Jacob, you guys are losers. That being said,
wow,
we are going to take our first break, and when we come back, it is the real meat of the program. As everyone knows on this program, we love our meat, and the meat of the program is coming up. So sit tight. On the other side of the break, it is tier list time. You're not going to want to miss it. This is the first time for Fantasy Points we have done a rookie tier show on the YouTube channel. Excited about that. Breaking ground here. Can't wait. All right, so as you can see, we have our super advanced setup. This time we have it so we know what player is who, which was a drawback from the wide receiver and quarterback tier show. We added text, so it's a little easier for me to operate, even though I have been accused of not being able to read very well. So with that being said, Brett, the man of the show, I'd say man of the hour, but we all know it's going to be more than that. Let's dive in. Number one thing to remember, not ranks. These are tiers. So for the most part, a lot of these players could go either way. That's something to keep in mind when you're watching something like this or when we're discussing this. This isn't necessarily player X is for sure better than player Y, but they're in the same tier, if you would. Brett, number one, who do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, just real quick on that note, I did try to organize it how I think my board will shape out, but I also, because it's fantasy focused, I did inject a little bit of how I think the NFL draft capital will work out, because I know the fantasy community cares about that a ton. So my board might look entirely different. Just reiterating that. Number one, Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, Colorado. Listen, Superflex fantasy football quarterbacks are scarce. They are a commodity that is scarce. This draft class is certainly not helping that. I know Shedeur has plenty of critics. I happen to love him. I don't think you're going to find a cleaner quarterback prospect in this class. For a lot of the reasons I loved JJ McCarthy last year, I love Shedeur Sanders, except now I don't have to have people throwing the low volume thing in my face because Shedeur has plenty of volume, guys. Lots of pass attempts under his belt. But man, from a repeatable mechanics standpoint, what he does in the pocket, his footwork, his delivery, his pre-snap stuff, getting into the right protections, things that I really care about, playing the quarterback position the way it's supposed to be played, not what you're seeing in Chicago with Kaleb Williams. This is what Shedeur Sanders is. He's awesome. And then to add a little pizzazz to it, he's awesome off script. So he does all the high level quarterback stuff really well. And if you need him to go create, make a play with his legs, and it's not as much running as it is extending plays to pass, but he's got that in his tool bag as well. Very, very good player here. Good arm talent as well. Some of the best tight window throws we've seen in the class.
And the only thing that I have seen the most with him is the way he holds the ball. Takes a lot of sacks. Is this part of because of the moving around, playing out of structure, trying to make the big play? Is that something that could be a concern? Because you mentioned Kaleb, and one of his problems has been his taking too many sacks. Is this something you could possibly see, especially behind a poor offensive line? Because let's face it, Shedeur goes to the Raiders, Shedeur goes to the Giants. He's running for his life.
No, I don't see the Kaleb component there at all. Like, Shedeur plays on script most of the time. He does play behind a terrible offensive line at Colorado. His pressure to sack ratio, though, is plenty fair and in fair margin there. Like, it's fine. It's not anything to be concerned about.
Love that.
I've become a little bit more Shedeur optimistic this year, and obviously, this just blanket statement for every player we talk about today that, like, I have not done nearly as much work on these guys as Brett has yet, and I reserve the right to change my mind drastically in January and February on a lot of these guys when I dive more in. But dive in more. The early vibes that I've gotten, if I was to do an NFL comparison, it's a little bit of Geno for me, where he's a guy from a situational perspective that's asked to command an extremely comprehensive drop back game without any run game at all and without any offensive line at all. And it's just putting a lot on his shoulders. And it's a spot where, to me, when you're in that situation, I think that the quality of the quarterbacking play to play can often look even a little bit better than the stats do. And his stats are not bad. He has high quality stats for sure. But I've definitely come to appreciate how much of the offense rests on his shoulders, not just from a production standpoint, but also from like an operational standpoint at the line and the management of it. Yeah, my only issue for him in Dynasty is I just like the quarterback position is unpredictable enough and so situationally dependent enough that I just get very skittish anytime we're talking about 101, 102 picks on quarterbacks who I don't project to have much rushing production, because you just need to be so perfect in your evaluation for that the pick to pay off. That would be the one reason that I end up low on Shedeur if I do end up low on Shedeur. But from the way that people talk about it, like, I don't hear a lot about any quarterbacks in this class in the top two in mocks right now. So if we're talking about 103, 104, 105 Shedeur Sanders, then that issue goes out the window.
Yeah, let me throw this in there. So you meant like the situational comparison, I think, is actually pretty spot on. I think they're very different players on the field, but the situational comparison is great. Shedeur's not going to turn the ball over, and I think from a play style standpoint, he reminds me a little bit of Joe Burrow. It's not a 1-to-1 at all, but the way he can extend with his legs to then throw the ball downfield, very similar to Joe Burrow. Similar arm talent too, where they don't have bazookas for arms, but they're really confident throwing the ball into tight windows, all touch for days. They have every tool, or I should say every club in the golf bag there. But to your point though, Jacob, if let's just extrapolate out and say he is Joe Burrow, but he doesn't have a Jamar Chase, that's probably not worth a 1-0-1 to your point, right? Like where's Joe Burrow scoring this year? He's barely a QB1, right?
Well, Joe Burrow without Jamar Chase is like we're looking at the Justin Herbert season.
Exactly.
So yeah. It's really the rushing to me is what makes 101 quarterbacks. This is my issue with guys like Stroud, guys like Bryce when they were coming out. It was, what's the rushing upside in general? And it's why, I'm anti-pylon quarterback that high to begin with. I don't think he's a pylon. I think he can move. I just don't think it's going to be a like. He's not going to
Definitely
be
not a
what I
pylon in
consider
the
a
real life
rusher.
sense, but he's not going to be like he's a mobile quarterback, but I don't think we should expect a lot of rushing production.
Right. We need him to hit 350 rushing yards for me to like really 300 to 350, like the Herbert season. You know what I mean? For me to really be interested, and I have a hard time with that with him right now.
Yeah, I don't see more than 250, and you all are making really good points. Like, he definitely has a lot of confidence in his arm. I think that his touch is probably the best in the class, and his confidence in himself, I think, is probably best in the class. Which, I mean, you want as a quarterback. The arm, like in terms of like just having like that pure arm talent to push the ball 60 plus yards down the field. That's not what you're getting with him. I do think he has a very good understanding of the offense, but sometimes he has too much confidence in himself for some of the throws, which we'll see how that translates into the NFL. And Thomas, like you're saying, I don't trust him enough in terms of trying to move with his legs or getting those couple, like, I don't know, let's just say 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. I don't know if that's really something that's realistic for him. And I'm terrified of the situation he's going to be going into. Now, if something crazy happens in the NFL draft, if Deion Sanders actually has, pull and finds him like the perfect landing spot where he has weapons, he has an offensive line, they're just missing that quarterback to go, that might change. I'm a little concerned with him that I don't think he's special enough to be putting in the S tier. I think he is the best quarterback in this class, but he's not really like that generational talent. And that's why I would be putting him in A, not quite S.
Okay, I vibe with that.
We're gonna put them for the sake of the show. Let's just put these guys wherever Brett wants them.
That's what we're doing.
I love the disagreement.
I like that as well. I was gonna make that a point to mention, a little different than what we were doing on the other ones. We do have some people with some size concerns. Timothy in the chat says Sanders' size is concerning. Looks to be a weight outlier. Is this something you're worried about or no?
No, he's 215, 220 pounds, and he's rocked up. So his dad's got him on an insane training regimen. I'm not worried about that at all.
Yeah, that's great point. Let's go with quarterback. I will just say back to the Burrow not having Jamar. The top 2 teams that seem to be projected to take him, the Giants and Raiders. At least they got Neighbors and Bowers. I mean, it's pretty.
I don't mind the Giants situation. I mean, like, it's fragile because there's nothing depth, but like you have Neighbors and you have Andrew Thomas. So if you can keep those 2
Theo
healthy,
Johnson,
you have LT1, wide receiver 1. Like the rest is a little bit easier to put in place.
I like Theo Johnson. I like Theo.
My big concern with both the Giants and the Raiders for Shedeur are potentially lame duck coaches, like we just saw with Kaleb in Chicago.
Yeah.
How much more leash is Dayball going to have? I think
he's gone at the end of the year.
Not make it to the end of the year either. So I don't know. I'm just saying that's one concern if they don't move on this offseason. Yeah.
Coaching is definitely going to be massive. 100%. All right, Brett, we are, as your co-host of the First Read podcast would say, Brett Whitefield. Let's move on to number 2 on this list. Who do you got?
Yeah, it's the guy that I'm sure most of you have number 1, and that's Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. Absurd skill set, absurd season he's having. Actually, it's really back-to-back absurd seasons if we're being honest here. So I'm not sure what his limitations are, to be honest, watching tape. He's a little undersized, but who cares? Like, he's the modern NFL size, so that's really all that matters, right? So from a player comp standpoint,
untackleable.
Yeah, untackleable. His tackle breaking metrics against good teams is a little bit lighter than the bad teams. But anyways, he's somewhere on the spectrum between Kenneth Walker III and Jahmyr Gibbs to me from a play style standpoint. I thought Kenneth Walker was a really good prospect. I thought Gibbs obviously was an awesome prospect. He's somewhere between there. Very insane burst and acceleration. His ability to cut off one foot is excellent. I really like the run scheme he comes from because they have a lot of zone stuff. They also throw in a lot of gap stuff with polars. So no matter where he lands in the NFL, he's going to have experience playing behind whatever that run scheme is. So I think that's a valuable trait. Something I loved about Bijan too, coming out of Texas. Texas literally runs everything. They run counter, power, trap, inside zone, outside zone. It doesn't matter. They run it all. So Jeanty has a similar, I guess, time on task with all of those concepts as well. So that excites me. And then he's underrated as a pass catcher. Dude runs absolutely crisp routes. They've basically asked him to not catch the ball this year. Not sure why. Last year he was a big part of the pass game, but it just kind of fell off the table this year. I'm not worried about that at all either. He's a complete dude.
So, I mean, I think everybody loves Ashton Jeanty. I don't know, other than like maybe some very weird people that are too online about the Heisman race. All agree that Ashton Jeanty rocks. You mentioned that you had him, that you were definitely going to have him behind Bijan. You might have him behind Gibbs. Like at the very, very upper 98th, 99th, 100th percentile outcomes, what do you see as the thing that holds him back from like where you would have had as a Bijan, or where you'd have like the quote unquote generational running back? If there's anything to nitpick?
If I'm nitpicking, I think the vision is concerning at times. I think he gets a little big play happy, especially if he has, and we've seen it in recent weeks actually, where he starts getting bottled up, 2, 3, 1 yard carries. He gets 5 or 6 of those in a row. He starts to hunt big plays. I think it's the nature of also chasing a Heisman. Maybe that he gets easily coached out of him in the NFL. If I'm nitpicking, that's the only thing I'd say. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, his vision was so crispy. His patience was excellent. His urgency, like he had this perfect marriage between urgency and patience. And sometimes I think Ashton just kind of lacks that just a little bit. We're nitpicking here. So
I mean, who knows? Because obviously none of us are can get inside the mind of Ashton Jeanty on a play-to-play basis. But I ascribe some of that, maybe more charitably, just to the idea, and I'm seeing Saquon comp in the chat, and I kind of felt similarly about him at Penn State, which is like Jahmyr Gibbs was playing in a very competent offense. Well, not at Georgia Tech really, but in his Alabama season, he was a cog in a fairly excellent wheel where he had to do his role, and you had faith that other people were also going to do their job.
It's true.
And in Jeanty's case, I mean, I'm not trying to be particularly disrespectful to Madsen or anyone else in that team, but like, he is the offense. He is the focal point of the offense. When they create explosive plays, when they score points, it usually has to come through him. I can see how your mindset is like getting this to 2nd and 5, getting this to 2nd and 6 is not necessarily resulting in us finding the end zone as commonly, where like I might need to find the end zone myself on this 2nd and 8 carry that I'm given. I have no idea if he's thinking about things that way. I just think that I try to be a little bit more charitable to the big play hunting when, from an offensive perspective, like their number one path to touchdowns is kind of Ashton big play hunting.
Yeah, those are salient points for sure.
We have someone want to know what is the landing spot? What is the nut spot for Ashton coming up in April? What is the landing spot for you? System, coaching with the coaches. We'll say coaches right now. We can't project coaches being fired. Who's going to be who's there and who's not. What's the perfect spot?
Well, I'd say, would you say, Jacob?
I said Chargers.
Yeah, Chargers would be nice. He's so similar to
again.
Jahmyr Gibbs to me that I would say wherever Ben Johnson lands up, if he goes somewhere this year.
Okay.
I think that'd be nice. Okay. And we know he'd probably be willing to do it too, because they did it here in Detroit, and he's going to try to do whatever.
That'd be I could see it in Jacksonville with Ben Johnson. That could be fun.
Oh God, it'd be fun when though, like it'd be kind of a logjam. But yeah.
Well, I mean, Ben Johnson's probably going to want 2 running backs involved. So, you trade Etienne if you could trade him, and then you do Jeanty as like I hope they wouldn't go 50-50 with him and Bigsby, but you do some sort of 70-30 or something like that.
Bigsby's your hammer, and then Jeanty's your
good.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah. I think ideally though, if you're looking at a guy who's going to be the first pick in Dynasty, you want him to land somewhere he's going to touch the ball 300 times a season though. So I don't know what that opportunity looks like right now. The NFL landscape is very crowded. The Chargers might be the one spot.
Okay. We're another year of hoping the Chargers draft a running back highly. This would be the year to do it for them. We know that they drafted one fake NFL player in Vidal. Hopefully they do not try to do that again.
I think that team does value the position. I just think it was a clear mandate from them this offseason to be like, we're gonna build the trenches year 1, and then we'll address the skill positions year 2. So that I could see them doing something like that, but We'll see.
Could.
It would be a blast because I mean the big thing I want for any running back, number one thing on my landing spot is just do they land with a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball to running backs, because that's the number one path to fantasy supreme upside. It's just a lot of these running backs. They're like a lot of these running backs do they land in a spot where they can absorb 4 or 5 freebie targets that aren't scheme targets because it's a pocket quarterback who wants to get the ball out to the running back.
We just talked about this in Dynasty Points market report this last week about Jonathan Taylor being a guy that doesn't catch enough passes. Like there's only every year or two, there's like 1 to 2 guys that are an RB1 by points and expected fantasy points per game that catch fewer than 35 passes. And their names are usually Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry. So there's only a handful of guys that can do that. So you're right. Pass catching.
But the landing spot does so much that point, right? Like look at these guys. Like look at like a Charbonnet when he plays or a Walker. Like, I'm not saying those guys aren't good pass catchers, but they're not like Jahmyr Gibbs, dynamic, getting space, and Gibbs barely even catches passes these days. But it's like in the context of that offense, so dropping back constantly, Gino's happy to take those checkdowns. Like it's a cozy spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously the whole package matters, but I think that's a good outlook. Tyler is back on his shit with the 5 and a very nice 69. Bonjour, you sexy beasts. Wish y'all were my Thanksgiving sides.
Nice.
So I will say
love
this
you,
about
Tyler.
Jeanty. If I had to put money on one player from this draft to make it in the NFL, it's going to be Jeanty. But we did this segment, I think it was 2 years ago, with Bijan Robinson about if you have the 101, are you taking Bijan because he was clear 101, or are you trading back? I am much more happy to trade back from 101 if my team's just garbage, and knowing that somebody's going to be targeting Jeanty to move up. I'm a little bit concerned about what his like long-term value is going to be. I also saw a tweet earlier today about, we always talk about, the miles that running backs have. This is a running back who's going to have about, I think it's almost 600 carries or more in college. That's a lot of carries that he's going to be. Yeah. But I mean, that's what he's going to be carrying over into the NFL. Like there are a couple of concerns that I have with him. I still think he's like, if anybody makes it from his class, it's going to be him. It's just, he isn't at the quite like Bijan tier. He's just a little bit below it, even though he's still awesome.
I like the mileage thing though. I mean, the running backs that we've seen that can hold up to these, like there are very few running backs that actually get like insane touchdowns in today's NFL. But the ones that do, like Saquon got a fuck ton of college touches. Henry got a fuck ton of college touches. Taylor got a fuck ton of college touches. Like those are the guys that actually do see those 95% snaps. I mean, Bijan, right? Like he was a workhorse, but he wasn't quite at that level of workhorse in college. He hasn't been quite that level of workhorse in the NFL. Gibbs obviously was a split time running back college, split time running back in the NFL. Like I like that he's coming in with a ton of touches. That I appreciate about him.
Yeah, that's going to be a whole strategy thing that we can get into. But if you're a natural 101, this is not the class for you to be picking Jeanty. Like that's really what it comes down to. Lots of running backs, like Brett said. You could definitely get a package and trade back /out, etc.
Yeah, sure.
Let's talk about the next tier. Well, you know what? We're 38 minutes, Lucas. And just so Trey doesn't get mad at me again, and I forget to run our second ad break and go to 55 minutes without it, let's hit our next one and dive deep into the second set, which is also the largest tier from what I can read /count, even though I've been told I don't count very well. We are going to dive into that when we get back on the other side of this break. Brett Whitefield.
All right.
We have a new position here is making its way. We have a wide receiver hopping in here, and we kind of talked about him a little bit today, and I liked what you had to say. Who do you got?
Tet McMillan, wide receiver, Arizona. People are going to be alarmed it's not Travis Hunter. We'll get into that when we bring Travis Hunter out to the list. But yeah,
people are. I think he's the consensus 102 right now. Most of the conversations I have with people in Dynasty World.
You think Tet is the consensus 102?
I mean, we're way too early, but like now, if we were doing rookie drafts right now in my leagues, I think Tet would go 102 in most.
Oh, cool.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's I made the comp of Jeanty being between Kenneth Walker and Gibbs, somewhere in that spectrum. Well, McMillan's somewhere between Drake London and Mike Evans. He's not quite as freaky as Mike Evans, but he's not quite as a pumpkin as Drake London. But very similar players, and they're what was that? What was the face, Thomas?
You call Drake London a pumpkin?
Well, he's just not a very twitchy athlete. Let's be honest.
All right, it's not a pumpkin.
Fine player. I love Drake London as a fine player.
Nikhil Harry's a pumpkin. Like let's.
No, Nikhil Harry was a tight end playing wide receiver. Like
no.
No, I love Drake London, but I wouldn't call him explosive.
Exactly. So Tet's explosive. Tet. He's near that Mike Evans, huge frame, but also explosive. But the buttery smoothness you get with Tech McMillan, the legit route running chops. I'm just gonna get out ahead of it before somebody asks. The contested catch thing is sort of BS. One thing about contested catch charting when it comes to college football specifically is it's mostly a quarterback stat. I've proven this over and over. I've done true contested catch rate the last few classes. I posted on Twitter every year. It's a thread. Most contested catches in college it's a quarterback stat because these guys are usually throwing late. The scheme is so uninventive that they're throwing design fade routes on 2nd and 10. It's just everyone's kind of reserved the fact that it's going to be a contested catch situation on purpose. But yeah, late throws, quarterbacks with subpar arms, lollipopping the ball over a defender's head. Like it is truly mostly a quarterback stat. So I'm not worried about the contested catch stuff at all with Tet. He didn't have very good quarterback play this year. He's a monster. He can do everything. For a guy that size, the movement skills are truly rare. The separation skills are truly rare. So he total package, body control, hands, everything you need. You run after catch for a big guy too. He's hard to bring down. So I love Tet.
Well, I was talking to Josh Chevalier, obviously the CFF All Access host, wonderful college fantasy football content creator. Also, shout out, we have the best CFF content embedding in the business. I'll fight you on it. It's okay. It's fine. But we did really well this year. He says insane vert. He says like a 40-inch vert. He hit 22 miles per hour in game this year. Kind of insane. And he says good hands, great route runner. 6'5", 216. So
you just described a top 5 pick in the NFL. If he's that size, he's hitting 22 miles per hour, 40-inch vert with the hands he has in the route running. What can't the man do? I mean, that's the complete package. So,
yeah, obviously,
I'll make a comp. I'll make a comp that is it's going to sound like it's solely based on his name, but makes sense to me. Kobe Bryant was once asked about Tracy McGrady, and he said that guy can do everything I can do, but he's 2 inches taller. And that's in terms of like a rangy athlete who can do everything that slightly smaller wide receivers can do, that are wide receiver ones, but are 2 inches taller. That's my T-Mac comparison is to the other T-Mac in a little different sport. That's like the one that I've been riding with.
Shout out Raptors legend Tracy McGrady.
Yes. I have 2 things on T-Mac. One, I think I get into an annual rant about the percentage of contested targets. It is my least favorite thing all the time. There's a lot of people. It's to me, it's very bad analytics. The reason for that is the way that the stat is usually presented, not always, but usually presented, is the percentage of targets that you earned that were contested. That tells you basically nothing. Because it doesn't tell you what the denominator is, which is the more important stat, which is how many targets did you earn. So like if you look at your overall route, the percentage of targets is 100, and then 8 of those end up being your contested targets out of 32% is your target share. That's like somehow looked at as worse as if you had like 4% contested targets out of like a 24%. It just doesn't make any sense. So like even if you stand, and I agree with a lot of what Brett says as to the issues with deeming a uncontested target as clearly better than a contested target. I'm not convinced of that. But even if you say that that's true, what you should really then be caring about is how many uncontested targets did you earn, not what percentage of your targets were contested or what percentage of your targets were uncontested. So I hate the application of that stat. The other thing is people then don't look at how good are you at contested targets. So what's not great? If half of your targets are contested, and then you suck at contested catches, that's not a very good combination. If you happen to be very good at contested catches, and one of the reasons why they're giving you more of those back shoulder fades and those opportunities is because that's a skill set you have, then I'm not really going to hold that against you. And then the last thing I'm going to say is you think about how an offense functions. I mean, a lot of these dudes that play at these massive programs are not going to have, they're not going to be able to have quite as high of target shares because there's more mouths to feed and there's more capable wide receivers in the progression. But you're not going to have to force as many balls because there's going to be more opportunities of open dudes. If you're playing on some of these teams where you're the only show in town, well, then chucking you a contested ball all of a sudden becomes a way more viable approach if that's the secondary option versus finding your other guy who's wide open. So I really hate that stat. I forgot what my second point was going to be, but I have to do that annual rant.
Not to belabor the point, I want to add to that. So if you want to look at a correlating skill set among the best receivers in the NFL, all of them are ridiculous at contested catches. Look at the best receivers of the last 5 years: Devonta Adams, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin. They're all freaking nuts at the catch point. Like every single one of them. That doesn't mean they can't get open. It doesn't mean they don't separate. It just means when push comes to shove and we need our dude to go beat your dude, we're going to trust that guy to make that play. So I think it's a great skill set to have. I'm certainly not knocking McMillan because he's great at contested catches.
Can we just say
remember
that
my second point now that I want to ask Brett? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, can we say maybe at 3 then, if that's the case? If he is what we think he is he a Patriot at 3 then? If the offensive line isn't what you think? No,
that would be a great spot for Tet, honest, for fantasy purposes.
Yeah.
I love
I'm excited about that for my Maybags too. Obviously, can we get him one other competent player on his offense at any position, please?
I see that or Carolina to me are like 2.
Yeah, for sure. The question I had about Tet, and so clearly, I think he profiles, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but as that potential unicorn X wide receiver in the NFL, one of the concerns that's happened with Marvin Harrison this year, in terms of his production, is like his skill set fits well with a lot of the X wide receiver things, but he doesn't necessarily have, from his skill set perspective, or at least as a comparative advantage to other wide receivers, is the easy button skills. Is it, a guy you want to toss a bunch of bubble screens to, get the ball in space to necessarily? What do you see as that aspects of Tet's game? Because that's the one thing that slightly concerns me with some of these bigger receivers, and not all, is like, do they end up playing a more valuable NFL role than fantasy role? Or do you think that Tet is a guy that they want to scheme easy buttons to?
So let me hit Marv real quick, because I think the concerns around Marvin Harrison Jr.'s rookie season have little to do with him and more to do with he plays with a boob of a quarterback and a boob of a play caller and Drew Petzig.
Okay.
These guys are terrible. I mean, some of the route technique they're teaching him with, like, they're asking a 6'4", 220-pound receiver to speed roll a dig route. It's like, bro, what are we doing? That's not what he's good at. That's not what he does. Yeah, it's so to your point, I think Marv could be fine on some more, maybe not bubble screens, but quick game type stuff, quick slants and some hitch routes, like kind of how AJ Brown's used in Philly. I think you could absolutely get Marv more involved in the short part of the field with that stuff. So, and then moving forward to Tet now, yeah, Tet's he's way more elusive than Marvin Harrison Jr. as far as run after catch stuff. So I would say bubbles, and he has a healthy diet of them.
Drag routes.
Drag routes, shallow crossers, medium crossers, working the boundary on a hitch route. Like, you can definitely get him involved in the short part of the field pretty easily with his skill set.
Yeah, he is a McShanahan system wet dream, really. Inside, outside type player, good run blocker, can do a lot of the nitty-gritty work as well. Never has to come off the field.
I just thought of a great comp for him once you said that.
Oh,
he's Jawan Jennings on the Captain American Super Soldier Serum. Yes,
I love that, man. I love it, Lucas.
That's fun. I will say with Tet, he's the one wide receiver in this class that feel like you don't have to scheme catches for. I think he can already go out and start winning targets organically. You don't have to go into it pre-play saying we have to find a way to get him the ball. He's going to go out there and earn the ball as soon as he steps onto the field as a rookie. So I think that he's a little bit more immune to different types of systems, a little bit more immune to different types of quarterback play. Like the big thing with Malik Neighbors is the way that we thought that he was going to be used. You don't have to have a good quarterback to get him touches the way that we thought the Giants were going to get him touches. I think with Tet, though, he can go out there, he can actually run as close to a full route tree as you'd want a rookie wide receiver to be running. And I think he's going to go ahead and start winning those catches. That's why he is like the clear wide receiver 1 to me. That's why, like, if you have a wide receiver need on your team and you have like one of the top draft picks, or if you're sitting there at 107, I'm doing all I can to try to move into the 103, 104 range to potentially get him. We'll see if he's still there. I know, Jacob, you were saying that you think he's going to be the consensus 102. I think a quarterback might sneak up. I think Shedeur Sanders might end up being the 102. If he is, then that makes me even more happy. I'm going to have more Tet on my roster.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a guy that you're going to want to move up to go and get. Let's move to the next player, because this is probably the player that we're going to take the most time on. We're at 51 minutes. We've got 3 players down on the board. We're
right on our usual pace today. We're right on our bullshit.
A lot of these guys are going to be able to speed through a little bit later in this.
I have way less to add on a lot of these other guys. So.
Correct. But I will say this player has already started fights in the Discord. It's already a hot topic.
Right.
I have little cue cards that to help me on this. I'm just going to throw that one. We don't need it for this one. We've probably done that the whole time.
Get rid of them. Merchant? Are we doing the snap merchant?
A lot of conversations about him. You have Travis Hunter here, Brett. A lot of conversations on will he, won't he, in the Shohei Ohtani role, if you would. Never really seen before at his rate that I can remember. This isn't a Patrick Ricard thing where he plays like 5 snaps a year at D-line and then plays fullback. This is a legitimate 2-way player. I think the last one I could honestly remember, I think was it Troy Brown on the Patriots? Like, I know it was a Patriots wide receiver that went and played both ways pretty well, but that's the last time I can remember.
Troy played both. He wasn't a full-time player on both, though. Travis Hunter's a full-time wide receiver and a full-time corner. Charles Woodson's probably the closest thing, but he wasn't a full-time player on offense either. He was like more of like a 600-700 yard kind of guy, third option in the offense. Didn't played half the snaps ish. So that's he's in rare air, man. So yeah, Hunter. The only reason I have him in the A tier. And somebody mentioned maybe we should move Ted up to the S tier. I kind of think that might be true, by the way. Talking that out with you guys, I think Ted would be an S tier. But Travis, just because I don't know what he's going to play, like what if Jacksonville drafts him number 1 overall and says, "Yeah, he's our cornerback. He's going to be our number 1," because they got a good wide receiver room. I don't know. I have no idea. At this stage of the game, I have no idea what's going to happen. I would assume, coming from the Sanders family, and he pretty much is a Sanders at this point, he's going to want to make as much money as humanly possible.
That's a wide receiver.
That's at wide receiver. Because you can be like mid at wide receiver and pull in 20 a year. Just look at Christian Kirk. Jaguars reference again. But at corner, you got to be dang good to reset the market at corner. You want to get in 20 million range as a corner, you have to be a top 5 guy. And he might very well be a top 5 corner in the NFL, but that's way less predictable than being a top 30 receiver in the NFL. So
my first read on Hunter is it's going to come down to more snap shares and needing to be with a coach that strategically uses him. I think he's going to play more wide receiver than corner, but I can see him being a nickel corner in the NFL, coming in packages and rotation, things like that. Certain situations, I can see that 100%. I have a hard time seeing the 80% of snaps through an entire game in the NFL. You can be a unicorn all you want. He protects himself. We've seen that quite a bit. He stays away from the big hits, etc. The NFL's a little bit. No, it's not. I don't think it is either. The NFL is just a different animal, but I see a role for him on both sides of the ball. Like if he's a 50% snap share on defense and he's a 75% snap share, 70 snap share guy on offense, and he has his packages, great. I can see that. That's to me in the realm of possibility. But I agree that I think you're rolling the dice with him until we get a better idea. I think for him, more than any other player in this draft, landing spot and coaching scenario matters more than any other player in this draft. It's got to be the right coach.
Because he might not play the offense. So
that's what I mean. Like it's got to be a coach that knows how to use him and maximize him, in my opinion, more than anyone else.
Brett, let's maybe to help, if you can help maybe contextualize how you view him in a vacuum versus this really weird specter that we've never seen before in Dynasty of like, will he play the position that we drafted him for?
He's an IDP GOAT.
Let's pretend, first of all, that he is just playing wide receiver and there was no fear about him ever playing cornerback or only running 60% of the routes or being a gadget player, any of that stuff. Where would you rank him among the wide receivers in this class, or generally taking away all of the externalities?
Yeah, I think he's the first or second best receiver in the class if he's just a receiver. With the difference between him and Tet is really just pick your play style. Travis is probably more of the modern guy that we're seeing thrive in the NFL right now, where he's smaller, just the foot speed and the quickness, ability to get in and out of breaks. It's just insane, man. And then he's so good at the catch point, for a smaller guy. What is he, 6 foot or whatever? So reminds me a little bit of Stephon Diggs, actually. Like he's very similar to Stephon Diggs from a play style standpoint. Yeah, I mean, he's awesome as a receiver, but the problem is he's a better cornerback. So I could very, very much see an NFL team saying we want that guy at corner because he's so good. And the NFL, the way they monitor players' snap counts these days, I don't see any team giving them both sides of the ball. Maybe in a pinch, we're down. Think about the attrition rate at corner for one. It's enormous. It's like second to running back. Running back's the most hurt position. Corner is by far the second most hurt position. So I just don't see a team letting him play both. So it is landing spot dependent. However, I do think if he is a receiver, a full-time receiver, he'll be just fine for you.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Yeah, obviously the diehards think he's gonna do it. He's a unicorn. It's 100% guaranteed, locked in. I don't see it as 100%. I don't like to speak in absolutes to begin with. That's how you end up on a retweet, quote tweet, fantasy receipt tweet, etc. And I just don't like to speak in those absolutes, but sure. I think he's a really good player. I'm gonna be waiting for landing spot. I'm gonna be waiting to draft him in the leagues that go the latest for rookie drafts. I will not be drafting him in pre-NFL rookie drafts. I'll say that. I got a couple of those. He's not gonna end up on those teams. I'll wait for the post-NFL drafts with more information.
I will say with Travis, I am a little concerned because he looks so much better on the outside than in the slot. And so if he is going to be kind of that gadgety player, we kind of think of, somebody that they're throwing into the slot who's not going to be running the full route tree. That's not where he thrives. He's a much better outside receiver. So we'll see how that ends up impacting what his future role looks like. But looking at his first year in, FBS competition to now, his snap percentages have changed drastically to where he is way more outside. He has looked a lot better with it this year. He's not, a huge yak monster. He is a way better route runner than I have been giving him credit for. And coming into the season, I was really skeptical of him being an actual fantasy asset. I think that he definitely can be that. I'd still, just for somebody who you're going to have to be drafting, potentially at 105, 106 to have him on your teams, there's way too much unknown for me to feel that comfortable with him, especially whenever, there's Tet, who I think is just a better prospect in general. But you have Tet there, who I think is a slam dunk pick. And then there's this kind of huge drop. And I prefer him over a lot of these other wide receivers that we'll end up talking about today, but the unknown scares the crap out of me, especially for where you're having to pay for it.
Yeah, risk tolerance is going to be like a really strong presence with him. Anything pre-draft, like I said, you guys that are animals, pre-draft NFL rookie drafts is insane to begin with. But I mean, they're fun, but my Lord. All right, we are going to kind of motor through here. These were kind of the big four. To me, these are the core four of the draft. Probably the most controversial. To me, everyone after this doesn't quite hit the same, if you would. So we're going to a little bit faster on these ones so Brett doesn't fall asleep live and or Jacob's laptop doesn't inevitably run out of power. We all know that Jacob's computer has a show limit that turns itself off after a period of time because it's over it. So you'd think a lawyer would have the technology to power through, but not the case for our lawyer. Not the case. Let's talk about the number 5 player. And, Trey is going to really love this one. Obviously, who do you got here at 5?
Iowa running back Kaleb Johnson.
I like the pick. I really like the pick. This is a team that does not have a lot of offense aside from him. What do you like?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, burst and vision. So I have 3 premium traits when I scout running backs. It's burst, vision, and ability to create beyond your blockers. The burst and vision with him are just truly elite S tier qualities for him. He's good, creating beyond his blockers, but that's definitely not like his calling card. If he lands on a team with the zone scheme, he's going to be just phenomenal in the NFL. I think he truly is a really good running back. I think in most classes, he's probably the RB1. It's rare that he's going up against a guy that's, Ashton Jeanty. So I love him. His tape is so good. He's, we're talking about the cyclical nature of the NFL, and you're just looking for toughness at running back, and he fits the bill that everyone's going towards. You're going to play too high against Kaleb Johnson, he's going to eat you alive. Like he's going to eat you alive. So I love him.
We've seen that in the chat too, where people are saying that the NFL taking the too high route, running backs are going to start creeping up more and more into that first and into the early second round here.
Yeah, you're seeing it already. I mean, just the running back contracts this offseason, the way they're being used this year, it's like it's free yards. You're going to play too high against a team that can run the football. It's free yards. So
just real quick, Simon, we have your super chat. We're going to answer that question. We're going to do that a little bit later so we can just power through some of these. We see you, Simon. We love you. We're going to get to it. Don't worry. I promise. I love this pick. I'm probably going to have a lot of him because I think the quarterbacks are going to, he's the type of player that you're going to benefit sitting at 105 and 106 when these quarterbacks inevitably go higher in the first round of the NFL draft, pushing them up super flex drafts because I got to have the quarterback. This is to me, a prime 105, 106 pick that you're going to be happy with. If you're just ready to stack running backs to start competing, this to me is going to be, if you've traded for a bunch of picks and you happen to luck out into this one, then you're going to be very happy. Do you think that he is limited to one system? Like, do you think, you said he's going to be real happy in his zone? If it is a man heavy system, because we know sometimes coaches and GMs, they try to draft someone and just shove them into the system. Is he going to struggle mightily in the man, or does it have to be?
No, he's just so good at, so like running in a zone concept is so much on the running back to set up defenders, make them peak gaps, and then, cut back against the grain. Not every running back can do it. Like you got to be able to cut off 1 foot for one. He can do that. You have to be, it's like this weird balance of patience and urgency at the same time. It's like you're patiently waiting to set up a linebacker, but you have to urgently press the line of scrimmage. So you're not, sorting out traffic at the last second. It's a very, very fine line you have to cross. And he's just kind of mastered it. So I just think he'd be awesome in a zone scheme. It doesn't have to be in a zone scheme. His burst and physicality, like, yeah, in a duo scheme or a power scheme where you can get him downhill in an alley, that's attractive too. I just think you're going to maximize the skill set in a zone scheme. Especially with a quarterback, like a read option style quarterback, put him with like a Jayden Daniels, the dude's going to freaking eat.
Can I give you a spot?
Yeah.
Let me hear what you think. The Denver Broncos.
Yeah, that'd be great. They're more duo than anything, but duo and inside zone for sure. That would be awesome. Be a great spot.
I mean, you get Bo Nix. They're gonna make the playoffs. The pick is gonna be a later. Like, Sean Payton wants.
Hey. We got a big game that's going to say a lot about who's making the playoffs in Week 15 there, buddy.
Yeah.
Let's not put the
Richardson
cart before the
hopefuls.
Bronco.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson needs to put together a few games that look good on the field and not just on film, if you know what I mean.
You're not enjoying the epic comeback drives 2 of the last 3 weeks here.
Honestly, I
will
need him to
acknowledge that I was looking at flights to Denver for the game, and had Xavier Worthy's reception not been re-scored as a rush, and cost me several thousands of dollars, I'd be in Denver for the game, but alas, I'll be watching it from my couch.
Amazing. No, I just love the spot there. I think the Broncos are making the playoffs, Jacob, so deal with it. But I love the spot, Sean Payton, late first. I feel like that's a really good spot for him. So that would be my pick. Who do you got next?
Amari Hampton, North Carolina running back.
I heard a lot of good things.
If you want like a slightly more juicy David Montgomery, this is your guy. Contact days. He just his ability to bounce off tacklers is just insane. Even when he's not necessarily breaking tackles, but he'll just drag a guy for 5-6 yards. I mean, he is very physical, just an awesome finisher. Underrated in the pass game as well. He's got really nice hands. Contact balance extraordinaire. Vision's a little suspect at times. North Carolina definitely provides some favorable box counts for him, and he does struggle to sift through traffic at times. A little Jalen Righty from Tennessee last year in that regard, but the physical skill set though is just so attractive. It's mouth watering. I think all three of these running backs we've talked about have first round potential. Obviously, Jeanty does, but Johnson and Hampton, I do think, have first round potential. Late first, that Denver Broncos range you mentioned, the Chargers range, somewhere in there. I think both these guys could go.
Can I give you a spot?
Yeah, please do.
Pittsburgh.
Ooh, I don't know. I'm a Najee truther, so that's tough.
They just don't pay running backs.
True.
They just don't pay running backs, and they have
Warren.
I
mean, they're definitely Pittsburgh's definitely only drafting a dude if they let Najee walk, because they're not going to have Najee and Warren and a third running back.
So I'm banking on Najee walking when I
think they're going to keep Najee though. I think they'll just keep going with Najee and Warren.
If he takes a discount, I agree, because they just don't pay up.
Is he a free agent?
Yeah, this was his last year in his contract.
Yeah, they declined his 5th year. So
yeah, so I like him in Pittsburgh. Should again late first projected NFL draft pick. They obviously drafted Najee in the first round. It could be their thing back to back. They don't pay running backs. I'm using that as history. Do you have a different spot that you like that would maybe bump them up these rookie draft boards a little bit?
I don't know. What about you guys?
I don't know. He kind of has Dallas written all over to me. Just like whenever I watch him, that's just that's what comes to mind. I think that I don't know. That's just it.
All right. Dallas.
Man, this would be like maybe it's a better NFL fit than it is a fantasy fit. But if I was looking for a running back that would make sense for me to pair with Chase Brown in Cincinnati, where you need like more of a banger, to Chase Brown being the more slender guy, and Hampton's for a big guy, he's a very, very capable pass catcher. So where you could get two guys that kind of can work in all phases with a little thunder and lightning, that would not be very. I mean, it'd be very fun for fantasy in the sense that to me, that's kind of what they envisioned their backfield being this year with Moss and Brown, and Hampton to me is like a way, way, way better version of Zach Moss.
Anti-misanthrope said Viking. You want to talk about fantasy?
I had Vikings too from an opportunity standpoint, but they're so outside zone heavy. I just don't see that being a good strength.
Okay.
Hampton's more of a banger crasher.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Hey, all right, here we go. We have. Oh, sorry. What are you going to say?
Hampton I've watched more because I obviously just like with the North Carolina offense. Like obviously I was watching all the May games last year, so I've seen a little bit more Hampton than some of these other guys.
I was just Kaleb Johnson would be a better fit in Minnesota than Hampton.
I agree.
Okay,
so, Brett,
love that.
Quick question for you, Brett. You were saying that you think there's going to be potentially 3 first-round running backs. Do you actually think that Amari Hampton can sneak into the first round? I just think that he has second-round running back written all over him in terms of where teams are going to value him. Somebody at the top end of the second round is going to love him and scoop him up, or might trade up to pick number 35 overall to get him. But I just have a hard time thinking that he's going to go in the first.
I think what the scenario you laid out is more likely for sure. It's all going to depend on how teams view his ability in pass pro and as a pass catcher. I think he looks good as a pass catcher. If NFL teams agree with me, I could see him sneaking into the end of the first round. If they don't, if they see him as a more of a Kenneth Walker, who's a Nick Chubb type, I could see early second round for sure.
I think he's a good pass catcher. I think that's a strength to me. Like I would say, I think he's got a little more juice. But if I was to like comp him to like another kind of like bruising running back that has pretty pillow soft hands, like you think of like a Charbonnet comes to mind to me. I think Hampton's got more juice in his game and more agility in his game. But I think he's an underrated pass catcher, especially at his size and strength.
I'll say this: if he slips in that second round, got a Raven personality, if you would, to replace Derrick Henry when his contract is up at the end of next year.
I hate that.
I would too for fantasy, but I'd like him on my football team. All right, next player we had in the chat. Very surprised we didn't see this guy earlier. Yeah. He is ahead of Sanders on a couple of boards that I've seen so far, a couple of rankings as well. Somewhat controversial pick, if you would, a little bit with how he plays football.
Champion.
Yeah, that's right. Carolina Hurricanes legend, Cam Ward, Brett. Let's talk about Cam Ward, who you have here.
Yeah, so let me just make a blanket statement about this QB class. And I love Shedeur Sanders. I don't think anyone's going to come close to, usurping him as my QB1. And I don't think Cam Ward and Jaxson Dart and a couple of the other guys, they're not top 5 caliber quarterbacks to me. But inevitably, because the NFL is the NFL, these guys will be talked about in that light at some point in this process. I'm just not going to do it right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to be true to my evaluation on Ward. Ward is a fascinating player. He has, if you just like toolsy guys, like if you loved Drake May last year, if you loved Kaleb Williams, you have to love Cam Ward. You're forced to, because he's got that crazy.
I like Ward, but as the
you're the Drake May guy,
Professor Emeritus of Drake May University, I'm an Allar guy. He's my QB1.
Oh, for frick's sake! Okay, woo. We'll get to Allar.
I don't know if he comes out though. I don't know if he comes out, but if he does come out,
we have that as a bonus at the end.
He's on the bonus list.
Spoiler.
But Ward, from an arm talent standpoint, I mean, he can do everything. All of the Mahomesian throws, that 10 other quarterbacks also make, but they're all called Mahomesian. Yeah, he's got all the different arm slots, all the different creating out of structure and just ridiculous tight window throw. Like he's going to do all that at the highest level in the draft class. It's the quarterback stuff he just doesn't do very well. He's not a great decision maker. He's going to turn the ball over. His accuracy will absolutely fall off the table for no reason other than inconsistent mechanics at times. He'll go like 5-6 throws in a row, just complete dog water, and it doesn't make sense. The pre-snap stuff, getting to the right plays, getting the right protections, he's not great there. Post-snap recognition's not great. So he's just, dude, if you love tools, he's your guy. It's just going to take a lot of work. And it doesn't mean I'm out on him. I'll have a first-round grade on him. It's not going to be a top 5-ish grade. It's going to be more like a middle of the round kind of grade, i.e. I have him 7 here. He probably gives you a little bit more rushing upside than Shedeur Sanders does, even though I think statistically they're very similar in that regard. I think he's a little bit better athlete than Shedeur is. So I think ultimately, especially down in the red zone, you'll see Cam Ward take off a lot more. So I think that is a little bit more upside for fantasy from a running standpoint.
Do you know who he sounds like to me?
Who?
A Cleveland Brown. He sounds like your prototypical guy the Cleveland Browns would overdraft. Sit on the bench a little bit.
In their front office that I don't know.
I mean, there are a lot of weird stuff focused in their front office as well. I could just see them taking a guy like him, letting Winston Bridge quarterback them, and then playing Ward a little bit later. It just seems like a very Cleveland Browns thing to do. Yeah. But it just popped into my head.
I like Ward. I agree with everything that you'd said for the most part. The two reasons why, despite being a pretty tools and traits quarterback person, why I'm a little bit less infatuated with him. And part of why I thought May was equal or even better than Kaleb last year's class was I fear that Cam Ward not only can he make plays out of structure, but like seems to desire to make plays out of structure
100%.
In a way that bothers me. And then the other thing too is just, I mean, we've seen a lot of older prospects succeed, but the older prospects that we have seen succeed recently, with the notable exception being maybe Jordan Love, but he wasn't quite as old as the other guys, were guys that over the course of their college career became very polished, like a Jayden Daniels or a Joe Burrow. And, you know, we had concerns about what happens when you come to the NFL. You've had that much experience. How do we weight that? I just don't love the idea of like third college team, older prospect who then the conversations about it is like, oh, he's really toolsy. He's going to need some time. It's like, I have more time for that conversation on like a 21-year-old junior. It scares me when we have like, you know, the incarnate word recruit who works their way up to Miami, who's then going to need more time. But I certainly see the upside. I mean, some of the throws he makes are ridiculous.
That leads me right into my Cam Ward comp. I think he's a little bit more athletic. Will Levis.
Okay.
Probably terrifying.
All right.
Anyone listening, but
hey, we're Billie Jean
I enjoy Levis.
apologists.
I mean, he's not that good, but I really enjoy him.
Will Levis can do things that just should make other quarterbacks envious. It's not all there, but I will say, dude's playing better in the back half. So let's go, Will Levis. I believe in you and your Mayo decisions. I believe in you. All right, Brett. We've got tight ends on the way here, as you were mentioning. Who's first?
Well, how about this? Let's just throw them both out. We'll have an organic conversation about them both. Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren, Michigan, Penn State. You play in a tight end premium league, both great options for you. Loveland kind of came into the year as the de facto tight end one. You know, I don't know that these guys are technically I don't know that they'll be first round guys. I think the tape is probably good enough. It's hard for me because it's not the most valuable position in the world. And we just saw Brock Bowers go. Where did he end up going? 9?
He went 8, not on any draft that I was a part of, but yes, he went 8 for the haters and the losers.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where he went with the Raiders.
Is it? Oh, yeah.
Oh, you mean in the NFL draft?
Well, I think both is pertinent here.
All right, his Dynasty Superflex ADP was 108. In the actual NFL draft, I believe he went 12.
Okay, yeah, so
13.
Yeah, and he was a superior prospect to these guys in every way, shape, and form, and he went 12th. I don't. Maybe they sneak into the end of the round, round one. But yeah, Loveland, he's more of your move tight end, traditional route runner. He's a little bit Dalton Kincaid-ish, maybe a little more athletic than Dalton Kincaid, but he's, that's what he does: route running, hands. He's basically a big slot receiver. Is also pretty good in the run game as a blocker. Tyler Warren's more your throwback, physical. He's somewhere on the spectrum of Michael Mayer and George Kittle. Run after catch, stiff arm you in the face, and a little Jeremy Shockey attitude to his game. I think he's a decent route runner. I don't think he's the most amazing athlete in the world. Although I say that, and he wears the Penn State jersey, and they go test like absolute freaks at the combine. So who freaking knows? But I don't think he looks on tape like I didn't think Theo Johnson looked like a great athlete either. And then he went and did what he did. So I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say we actually had a pretty decent tight end class for everyone not named Ben Sinnott, who just is getting Zach Ertz every single week, which depressing, but still. Right.
Halfway to the Trey McBride arc. Step 1, get Kingsbury to sit you behind Zach Ertz for a year. Step 2, ? Step 3, profit.
But with guys like Sanders and Theo Johnson looking really good, obviously you feel these two are better prospects than those two. But even those guys were going pretty early into the second round at times in these tight end premiums. So you're thinking probably no later than like a 111 to 202, which is probably very profitable for these two guys. Do you see year one possibilities or kind of the classic tight end arc for these guys?
Oh gosh, that's hard to say because with Loveland, he's already a pretty refined route runner. With Warren, he's insane after the catch. So like you can make it happen with him if you have to. And then Loveland with the route running, like he should be able to separate against, linebackers and bad safeties. So yeah, I think there's potential there. It's just so rare. But like comparing it to the class before, these guys kind of remind me of Kincaid, Laporta.
Okay.
For that tier of prospect where it's like late first into the second. I mentioned Michael Mayer in there too with Tyler Warren. They're like right in there for me with all those guys. So I think that's fine. Like I had a 1 on Kincaid. I'll probably have a 1 on Loveland, but it's gonna be a late one.
Okay, yeah, I did as well. Then Laporta was my 1 in the class, and then I went Kincaid in that one specific. But I think it's important to note that it's more Kincaid, Laporta than it is Sanders, Theo Johnson, because that's a huge like that. When you get a pair of tight ends, that's generally what's going to get compared to, especially when we know right that these aren't Bowers, Pitts, level prospects. So that's good to know. These are valuable pieces. Again, you're going to be very very happy to have late 1s and 2s with these players. That's going to do it for that tier, unless anyone has anything to add. Jacob, I know you're on the Twitter box constantly talking about these tight ends with one person specifically anyway. But that's more of a meme than anything else.
No, I did want to get Brett's take on this. And the funny thing, I mean, Max and I have had these discussions about Bowers particular, but I don't want it to get misconstrued. I actually agree with him like 87%, which is why I spend the energy debating the other 13%. There's going to be a lot of people based on the production that are going to be Harold Stannons. And that's my name for the fan and fan club. So what are your thoughts on him? He's been single-handedly carrying some of my C2C teams this year. What are your thoughts on Fannin? And then maybe just more broadly, how the modern NFL works for some of these prospects that are putting up pretty insane receiving stats, but that are coming in more undersized. You could put in like a Burning Stool into this category too, other guys like that.
Yes. So Fannin's, I have him earmarked as a guy who I'm likely going to be higher on than I am right now. I've seen 6 games from 2024. And by seeing 6 games, I mean, I've like did deep dives into them, and 2 games from 2023. So I have not been exposed to all of his tape yet. Does not have a composite score yet for me. The tape is ridiculous. Now the level of competition also stinks. Like there are linebackers and safeties trying to cover him that will literally be, not in football next year. So that's the tough part about it. He reminds me a lot of Isaiah Likely as a prospect, where Likely, like his tape against that level of comp was comical. I mean, he had a 99-yard touchdown one year where he outran every corner on the field, and then he goes to the combine and tests like crap, and you're like, what that doesn't even make sense. But it's just the level of comp is weird. I do think Fannin's a more developed player than Likely was when he was coming out. Fannin is a little bit better route runner. And your question about the size specifically, like the new modern prototype tight end is small. Trey McBride's under 250 pounds. Sam Laporta under 250. Dalton Kincaid is under 250. Jonnu Smith, Evan Ingram, all of these true pass game weapons. They're all smaller guys. Now Fannin's a little bit smaller than those guys. Even I think he's listed at 230. I would imagine he's going to go on a crusade to get up to 240 by the combine. But point being, I'm not too concerned with it as long as he doesn't get the tweener label. Like, who was the dude from Florida State last year that I loved that got the tweener label?
Oh, Jaheim Bell.
Yeah, Jaheim Bell.
Him too.
And Jim Nagy told me from the start, it's like, dude, the NFL is just not going to see him as a tight end.
The screen god.
Yeah. And downfield too. Great downfield. But point being is like, as long as he doesn't get the tweener label, I think he'll be all right. Is he at least 6'4", Fannin? Do you know?
Yep. That's what it's listed as.
Okay. So as long as that holds and that's not a Bowling Green inflation, 6'4", 230 or 240 is workable for sure.
Love that. We can skip him later now, but we know where he's at. Let's take our last break of the program, and on the other side, we're going to run through this tier of 4 wide receivers, and then we're going to kind of do a quick dive on the remaining of the tiers. We're going to run through them fairly quickly. Hold on to your seats. We're going to go fast. Of course, I say fast, and I mean fast for this program. But we're working on it, Brett. I promise. Let's talk about these wide receivers. And this one specifically is tied into a question that we have, but who do you have at the top of this third tier sitting here at 10?
I have Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden. Now, this is interesting because it's pretty rare you go into a season with like a consensus top 4 guys, and then it holds almost exactly. And that's kind of what we have this year with Tet, Travis, Luther, and the guy we'll talk about next. It's like that was the preseason top 4, and it's probably likely to be the actual top 4, I think. So that's crazy to me. But Burden's a little bit more of your gadgety type guy that Lucas was referring to earlier. I think he's 5'10", 5'11". He's got speed for days, insane quickness. Missouri used him on all kinds of screens and shallows and space plays. You know, you could take some shots with him. Because of the nature of the offense, it's hard to grasp just how refined his route running is. The movement skills are there, no doubt. Has the potential to be an excellent route runner. Reminds me a little bit of Zay Flowers, though, where it was like kind of a weird offense. Didn't get pressed ever. We don't really know what that release package looks like. And then, you know, that's when he struggled in the NFL. That's why. It's like he's not the most detail-oriented player. So I worry about that with Burden a little bit, but the electric aspect of what he brings to the table is pretty exciting.
So Brian from the Discord had asked, good landing spots for Burden to maximize his impact. To feel even better about him as a prospect, do you have a spot in your mind where you would potentially move him up a couple of spots?
I would like him to go somewhere that has probably an established one. So let's say the Falcons don't hold on to Darnell Mooney. I think him replacing Mooney in that offense would be a very, very big win for both fantasy and for Luther Burden.
If you're going to replace Ray McLeod.
Yeah, or if you want to roll with a trio, yeah, Ray McLeod. That actually, you just described Ray McLeod kind of the way I described Burden, so that's perfect.
Yeah, just don't wear number 34 for the love of God.
I don't know. I have not watched like any film on Burden, so far my impression of Burden is based on solely his statistical profile and watching him on broadcast view. Sure. So I want to state that off the top. So I reserve the right to change this view. But like from a broad viewpoint, and I'm going to put this to you and then tell me if you think this inclination does not apply to Burden. It's not really my argument yet because I don't have enough knowledge for it. If there's a like type of prospect from a data profile perspective that I usually avoid like the plague, it would be like the hyped up freshman guy who produces a lot, plateaus in production completely, and then it's like, oh, like he never really grew. He's kind of still in this gadget role. Like I like start seeing plateauing production with early production plus is he a real wide receiver concerns, and that's like nightmare for me. Yeah. Tell me if that applies to Burden or if he's just being failed by the Brady Cook of it all.
I think both things can be true. I think Missouri's a weird program, and it's hard to really stand out there on offense. I do think the situation around him probably stifled his growth. So I think it's both. It's both. To add to your point too about concerning profiles, I think most of his like really exciting route wins, like downfield, were from the slot. And you guys already know my take against quarters coverage where he's one-on-one with the safety. Bro, if you can't beat that guy, you don't deserve to play in Division I football. So like, same issues I had. I mean, we've gone through the list over the years. Wan'Dale Robinson, Elijah Moore. That's how those guys all piled up stats. So that's my bigger issue with Luther Burden. So those two things together, that definitely makes for a concerning profile.
You had somebody in the chat saying, I hope he's not Rondale Moore. Right? That's been in the chat.
So I'm not a Burden stan. Like I'm not. I've always had concerns with him. Even as a freshman, like I would have loved to have seen Missouri use him differently. They tried to push him into being an outside wide receiver and just run vertical routes, and he wasn't great at it until there was just a complete bust in coverage. And he's like, oh, he's fast enough to, get 10 yards of separation in a hurry whenever they're running zone and forget to cover that area of the field. Yeah, he's a good athlete. I think, Brett, you said it perfectly. that like he has great movement skills, but they just pushed him so far into the slot role, and then that's where all of his production came from. That's really concerning. He was injured a lot of this season. I know he was dealing with an ankle thing for several weeks there, so it's a little tough to like gain too much from what he was doing this season. And then just Missouri in general was kind of beat up, so I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, because there's definitely a scenario where he can be special if you find the right person to use his athletic gifts. And I mean, the NFL is not a development league, but if he can develop a little bit more in the NFL, like there's definitely a scenario where you like him. But I think he's going to test well at the combine, and that I think people are going to see the tape of him whenever he's catching a pass with 5 yards of separation, because they had him going backwards to get his ball, and people are going to start drooling. He's going to start going up draft boards, and he might end up being anywhere between 104 and 107 when it's all said and done. And that's just not a player that I'm really willing to invest in at that price.
Right. You basically described a fake ass god, if you would. Fake college ass guy. I made the joke earlier in the year that it's hard to be a wide receiver 1 in rookie drafts when you're not even the wide receiver 1 on your own college team. And that's kind of how I felt about him earlier in the year. Haven't gone back to check that take through. So as Jacob said, I hold the right to change that opinion.
Hey, Theo Weiss, man. Oh.
That was my running bit with Luther Burden earlier in the year. So obviously there are some concerns, Brett, like you mentioned. Don't love the names that you threw out there. So again, probably somebody I'm going to end up lower on, because I don't want a Spider-Man meme type wide receiver. I try to avoid the gimmick guys, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Speaking of wide receivers, Toronto Dave said you should put him in the C tier then. But we'll see. Oh, actually, he should be in the C tier. Did I mess that up?
No,
should be.
No, he's in the.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm good. Didn't mess that up. Toronto Dave, you almost got me. Let's talk about another player
I promise
here.
to have 0 comments on the next 3 players in the spirit of moving along.
Okay, let's hit the next 3 wide receivers here. Who's next here, Brett?
We got Isaiah Bond, wide receiver, Texas.
Okay.
Listen, when I go head to head with him and Burden, I actually like Bond better as a prospect. I told you I try to weave in how I think the NFL will feel about these guys. We see a player like Luther Burden go too early in damn near every freaking draft. So I think there's a chance he goes ahead of Bond in the draft, which is why I have him ahead on the tier board, because I know you guys like draft capital. I'm going to be avoiding Burden in most dynasty drafts. However, Isaiah Bond I like a lot more. And they have some similarities from the standpoint of like insane vertical speed, quick accelerators, just, burst for days. I think Bond's a more developed player already, though. I think he can play on the outside. I think he can play in the slot. He's a pretty good route runner. He had to play with Quinn Ewers this year and did relatively well, which is hard. I mean, that's an accomplishment.
I was just talk about burdens.
You want to think about? Do you think that Ewers ruined Bond the way that maybe people thought he ruined Worthy?
Yeah, potentially. Although I wasn't a huge Worthy guy either. But
no, me either.
Man, the thing with Bond, I think that's got people a little shook is he kind of has this soft mantra. He's banged up all the time, doesn't necessarily play through injuries. That's not great. Wide receiver is another position of attrition, as we've seen this year, for the love of God. So I think that's tough, and he'll have to answer those questions come scouting your draft season or whatever. And we'll never be behind the curtain enough to know if that's actually a thing or not, unfortunately. But that's just kind of where I'm at with him.
Okay. I like that take. Who do you got next? I will say everything that I've read up, and you have this guy at 12, which I think is interesting. Kind of a slot only player, which obviously slot players be still very successful in the NFL, but bit of an older prospect as well, from what I can tell. Let's talk your 12th player on the board.
Yeah, that's going to be Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver in Miami. This guy, so he's here where he is because this is going to be one of my draft crushes of the year. He reminds me a lot, like the NFL always misses a guy or two every year. Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of these guys for me. Puka Nacua was one of these guys for me. I'm throwing Restrepo right into that mix. He can play on the outside.
I love this guy.
Yeah, do you? Okay. Yeah, he can play on the outside, I think. but he obviously is going to be best in the slot. Just a excellent route runner. All of the, I don't know, gritty, tough cliches you want to throw out for a slot receiver, that he embodies all of that. He's absolutely ridiculous at the catch point. Maybe some of the best college catches I've ever seen from Restrepo this year. Made Cam Ward look, really good at times. I think he does everything well. I don't think he has a true weakness to his game. He's not exceptional at a lot of things, but he's just across the board. Actually, he reminds me of Ricky Pearsall a little bit, who was another guy I loved last year. But he's got that gritty toughness, grinded out mentality. Really good run blocker as well. He's going to go get after it there. I think he's going to be a coach's friend. I love everything about this guy. I'm excited to see him at the Senior Bowl, by the way. He's going to be, premier viewing for me.
You know how I know that I want to move somebody up in my own rankings? When Brett lights up talking about a player more than like other guys, they immediately get the Brett Whitefield tick on my list, and Restrepo just earned it. One more wide receiver left in this tier of 4 here, the 13th ranked player in the tier list so far. You have
Elic Ayomanor from I have Ole Miss on the sheet, but it's actually Stanford. That was a typo, obviously. This is a dude I have earmarked. I talked about Fanon earlier as a guy I'm probably going to like more and more as the draft process goes on. In fact, I'm just going to say it right now, he's probably going to end up higher scored than Burden and Bond for me. One thing this draft does not lack that several drafts in the past have is size at wide receiver. A lot of these guys are big, minus Burden and Bond, obviously. He's one of them. He's good frame, 6'2", 210, explosive. I think he might be the best route runner in the class. Straight up. Vertical speed for days. The dude, like I've gotten exposure to, I think, 9 of his games now. Just every time I watch him, I fall a little bit more in love. So not only that, he's going to be a coach's best friend. He does all the little things well. He's a menace in the run game, throwing guys on the ground, bouncing them out the club, blocking them into the other team's bench. He's awesome on scramble drill, which, again, one of the nitty gritty, dirty things that NFL teams will look for. I think he's exceptional at identifying soft spots in zone, understanding coverages and leverages. He's just awesome there. He wasn't pressed a lot in college, but when you saw him get pressed, he disposed of press coverage like it was nothing. I mean, just tossed it aside like it was a big. He's got 3 or 4 different releases that I picked up on in the 9 games that I watched. I'm sure there's even more in there. Just exceptional all around, X type player that I kind of like.
No, I love that take. Don't know a lot about him, I'll admit, but I look forward to diving in.
I'm glad we got to dabble into these guys because it's fun to see, like, as you kind of get past the big names that everybody has at the top of the board. I love seeing these guys because it feels like I'm getting a peek behind the curtain at like Brett's guys.
Yeah.
Where it's like once it's sort of like you get past Burden, it's like everybody gets kind of their own flavor at this point. And I mean, obviously, I really like it when one of your guys happens to be one of my guys, and in Restrepo. But yeah, I'm super pumped to watch more of Ayomanor.
Hey, we have got we have that he destroyed Travis Hunter last year. I think that's kind of interesting. And we have a couple people asking about another receiver you have in the next tier. Let's kick that one off though with a couple players from Ole Miss. And I know Anti-Misanthrope cannot wait to hear you talk about
my other dude in this class. I have 100% Debbie exposure, I think, to this guy.
All right, let's talk Trey Harris, Brett. What do you and do you not like?
Yeah, Trey's another one of these big guys, very experienced player. I'm going to say something that's going to probably scare a lot of people. He reminds me a little bit of Tyquan Thornton.
Okay.
In that I think he's just a little stiff in the hips for a wide receiver. And that's really my only complaint with him. I think that's a limiting factor. I'm trying to think of a guy he reminds me of. Like other than Tyquan Thornton, someone I can give you a little more praise with. He's a tough guy to comp. I mean, maybe like early career Robert Woods, something like that, kind of gritty, vertical. I mean, the vertical stuff is great with him, and that's where the NFL attraction is going to be. Is he's awesome on the vertical route tree, whether it's posts, corners, go balls, back shoulder stuff, good ball skills. he's not overly elusive, but I think that comes back to that stiffness. I don't think he's going to be an overly dynamic route runner, but he's sudden with his acceleration. He's, he on routes that contain one break and it's not necessarily a flat break, he's good. So slants, posts, corners, I think he's good on those routes. Double moves, not so much. Anything that has a lot of detail with a release is not going to be great for him.
Kind of like I need to hear more about, because this is probably one of the bigger hits I've had in Devi in terms of just value increase. Like I was in on this guy when he was at LA Tech.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of found money where it's like, oh, he's going to be a top 60 pick in the NFL draft. This is where I need my Brett Whitefield takes to know whether I got to sell these shares or keep these shares, basically.
Yeah, definitely not projected as the team's number one, but we'll definitely see. Let's talk about his quarterback, though.
Yeah.
Very exciting player. I know a lot of people that I know in the Devi community love this dude. I mean, he has definitely got swag for days. You see he's rocking the headband, and obviously you got to have drip to make it. I look at drip and swag it's a staple. You got to have it. Like a tight end not wearing gloves, as Buck would say. But let's talk about Jaxson Dart
here. Aesthetic where they just have like white dudes who have too much swag play quarterback for them. Like Corral had the same vibe where it was like, what is going on with this?
It's hard to not look like you have drip in that jersey.
Ooh, their vibe is you need to fail at least once after having so much hype, but you have enough confidence to come back. That's how you find an Ole Miss Rebel quarterback. It's just that's where it succeeds.
It's 4 consecutive years of white dudes with headbands.
Yeah. That's a good corollary right there. Brett, let's talk about Jaxson Dart. What do you like? What do you don't?
Yeah, I really like Jaxson Dart. I think it's him and Cam Ward from a football standpoint, like the evaluation is gonna come pretty close to the wire there. So if you liked the passing aspect of Jayden Daniels' game, I think Jaxson Dart is for you. Complete, just awesome vertical thrower of the football. He's gonna push the ball downfield. Some of the best downfield accuracy I've ever seen, and I'll throw that up there with Jayden Daniels, who I thought had the same kind of moniker last year. The only real limiting thing about his arm and the passing stuff is just the offense he comes from is just doesn't translate to the NFL. I think that's going to be an issue. It's similar to what Hendon Hooker was dealing with in Tennessee.
Exactly.
Yeah. It just makes it tough to evaluate, and kind of the developmental runway needed for Jaxson is going to be pretty extensive. He's not a guy you're probably going to see play year one, even if he gets pretty good capital. There's basically no post snap reads or progressions in that offense. It's all pre-snap, predetermined stuff. We've seen other, like Drake May played in a similar offense, and he's doing fairly well as a rookie with low expectations. So it's not a deal breaker necessarily, but I do think this will change the NFL's opinion of him a little bit. He's also a really good runner. He might be of the top quarterbacks. He might be the best runner of the football for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think
this applies to him and to Harris, obviously, and to some of Judkins' tape. Like, what do you do when you watch a Lane Kiffin offense and you try to make sense of it to an NFL perspective, like, or other similar offenses? Like, how do you, like, if you're scouting these guys? Because I remember this with like watching Jalen, right? It was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? Like, there's like, so it's like, when you're watching guys play in these offenses that are like way outside of what you would ever see in the NFL, like, what do you try to identify?
So you got to rely on the traits, honestly. Like, so for like a wide receiver, for example, like how is he breaking down to break out of his routes? Like, what kind of techniques is he using? What's his footwork look like? For a quarterback like Jaxson Dart, he has really clean pocket mechanics. Footwork is really good. He's not heel clicky. He's not up on his toes. He's got a really good base, consistent. The throwing mechanics are roughly the same on every single throw, unless he's, out of structure creating. So those are things you can hang your hat on. If that stuff was also messy, and then he's dealing with the fact that he's never, had a progression-based offense, doesn't understand how to break down coverages, that's when it gets really dangerous, right? But because he does the small things really well, I think that's like he won't have to learn that stuff when he gets to the NFL. So that from day one, they can just start getting into the playbook and building that offense. So I have a little confidence, just because I think he's got a really good foundation to work from. He's a good athlete, and he's got an exceptional arm. I think those things will bode well for him.
I think he's going to be one of my more drafted players in the second round of Superflex redrafts. I feel like I'm just going to have quite a bit of him. We have in the chat, it says he equals Gardner Minshew, which I've seen in the chat there. So
Dart has a piss missile cannon for an arm. I would never do him a disservice comping him to Gardner Minshew.
Maybe it was a swag metric. We'll have to see what Jaxson Dart looks like in jorts.
Yeah, maybe.
He also has the coolest the combination of name plus swag.
True.
It's at least like a half tier upgrade. If your name is Jaxson Dart and
I
you're
also love
just like
the way
swagging all over the place, like that's
So I will say with this name, that honestly brought his value down to me for a while because it propelled his value up in Devi leagues because everybody's like, that's an awesome name.
That's
and it's just like one or two more spots that he's going up. What was that? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, is it the Tank Bigsby scenario with the NFL?
Exactly. Both coming from overrated SEC programs, and both people they just love the name. So it bumps them up one or two more spots. Luckily, though, his first year at Ole Miss, he was so bad that it just ruined his value in general. So people were able to get him much cheaper then. So now, it's been fun to crap on him a little bit, and then he came back up. But it's just one of those things.
So we've got two players left to talk about. The last tier, we're just going to rattle off some names so we can get out of here. We've already talked about Fannin Jr., but before Fannin Jr. at 16, you had the master of college football 25 ranked play, the spin move Messiah in that game before he got patched. A lot of questions as to why he went to Ohio State, but he did. Let's talk about Quinshon Judkins. Definitely my kind of second round rookie draft running back. As Jacob and I talk about often, I am more inclined to hammer running backs in the second round than I am wide receivers, just because when one hits, they hit for gold usually. So this is definitely somebody I'm going to be in on, unless Brett, you tell me not to be. Let's talk Quinshon Judkins.
No, I like Quinshon a lot. I don't think his tape this year was as gratifying to his skill set than it should have been, especially on a team that's competing for a national championship, if we're being honest. But Judkins is good, man. He's 6 foot 220. He runs angry. He's physical, violent, fast. Big, fast. It can break tackles. That's usually a really good combo. He'd be a lot higher on my list, guys, if I thought he had any vision whatsoever. I think that's his downfall.
He's good.
A big play hunter. He gets. I've never seen a running back, I don't think, have more self-induced TFLs against him than Quinshon Judkins. And what's weird is he didn't really see that last year. So I'm not really sure what the difference is.
What are you looking at in the Kiffin offense? Like, are you like I just like
light box galore, right? 5-6 man boxes all the time. So that's a good point. Ohio State a little more pro style, so they're going to see 7, 8, 9 man boxes on the regular. I think that is a little, unfortunately, he's not going to score great for me just because vision is one of my premier traits, and he's going to score pretty poorly there for me. But I do like if he falls into the right offense, right system, vision, something that's teachable as well, because a lot of vision comes down to patience and stuff like that. So it's not a deal breaker, but he's a little bit lower than those other running backs we talked about because of it.
The biggest thing with Quinshon to be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go, Lucas.
The biggest thing with Judkins for me is that his freshman season was amazing.
Insane. Yeah.
Nobody saw it coming out as like a lightly heralded 3-star recruit, goes off for 1,500 yards in the SEC and looks otherworldly. And, he's going like first overall in some Devi drafts after that.
Yep.
And he has such a slow start to his sophomore season. People are really concerned. He just looks so much slower. He kind of turned it on at the end of the season. And then this year, he's having to split work with another NFL running back in that backfield. But it just concerns me so much that the best version of him that we saw was as a freshman. And it's just started to keep going downhill. Like it seemed like he just trusted himself and like his abilities as a freshman. He went out there, he balled, and it's like as things are becoming more complicated or more things are being put on his plate, he just starts to go downhill just that much more. So I'm really, really concerned about him. He definitely has some home run speed, which I like. He's not as like I think that he would break more tackles than he does. He's still fine at it, but he's not, elite at it for somebody of his size. It just seems like there's something slightly off about his profile.
To your
It's the
point,
cycle of the Ole Miss running back where Zach Evans was the big hyped guy. Judkins stole Zach Evans' soul, and then Judkins kind of. But I mean, I love that the physical traits to me are fantastic, and my hope is he's basically had 1 year playing running back in a real offense, and so hopefully that some of the vision issues and stuff can be taught in the NFL. Obviously, I was hopeful that we would see this year that he had more of those things that were sort of hard to figure out when you're playing in Kiffin land. But yeah, obviously not the greatest year this year. Do you like Henderson at all either? The other guy in the backfield?
Well, we're going to talk about him later.
Okay.
So let's hold off on that. We can ask the question about him, but we added Fannin Jr. Yeah. Let's talk wide receiver at Ohio State. Brett, who you got?
Oh, yeah.
Emeka Egbuka.
They've been asking in the chat for an hour when he was going to come out.
Yeah, I like him. He's not I don't think he's an overly high ceiling player. I think he's a really intelligent, super high IQ guy. Actually, my working comp for him right now is Rashee Rice, and I've watched every snap Emeka's ever played. I think some of the athleticism downfield is a little bit fake, a little bit inflated by college secondaries, where I think his role in the NFL is going to be as a power slot, big run after catch slot kind of guy. Really, just really awesome feel for zone coverages. I think that's where he thrives, and then you can scheme stuff up for him too. If you're going to play too high against him, you can give him some of those Debo looks where, whether it's end arounds or just screens, shallows, whatever you got to do to get him the ball in space. So I don't think he's a super high ceiling player, but I definitely like him. He's going to be very valuable to an NFL team for sure.
I want to note that Brett Whitefield just said he is a 1-for-1 comparison to Debo Samuel.
The next Debo, like Twitter has been looking for since Debo was drafted. No, clip it and save it. Cade, don't do that. So that's the end of that tier. So we're gonna move into the D tier, and for time purposes,
we're list them all.
We're gonna list them, and we're gonna reserve questions for one guy, maybe two. Then we got our game, and then we're gonna get out of here. So Brett actually wants to come back next time. We're going to list these tiers. So Brett, you hit me with the names and anything you feel necessary to mention about these players, and then we'll ride.
All right, let's go. Jayden Higgins, wide receiver, Iowa State. Whoa. This is another guy I think I'm going to wind up on higher than some of these other guys we've talked about. Ex receiver type. Awesome downfield, really, really, really crispy route runner. I think his body control for his size is exceptional. I think NFL teams are going to like him. Plays in a weird offense, so that's not ideal, but he's a very good player. TreVeyon Henderson, running back, Ohio State. The other running back, gosh, Henderson has so much to like in his game. The juice, he's got juice for days. The cutting ability, it all resembles J.K. Dobbins a little bit. It's great. But he's very, very soft for running back. Always hurt, always banged up. The fact that they brought in Quinshon Judkins is not a good sign for me with TreVeyon Henderson. They knew he wasn't going to hold up for a whole season. He never has. So that's the biggest concern there. Talent, all-world talent guy. Maybe more talented than the Omari and Hamptons of the world even. He needs the health and the body to not fail him. Or maybe it's a mentality thing. I'm not really sure.
Before you get to the next one, I want you to please be careful that there are 2 Tennessee Volunteers fans on this podcast. So just keep that in mind for the next guy.
Yeah, 1 alumni and 1 fan. Let's go with the next one.
Jack Bech, wide receiver, TCU.
Oh, I was going in the wrong order. My bad. Sorry.
You're good. Formerly LSU. This is a guy I'll be higher on than everybody come actual draft season when we're stacking my big board. Very much the gritty slot type player. Was a tight end wide receiver hybrid for a little while. Broke out as a true slot receiver for TCU this year. He was a C2C cheat code. I actually traded Colston Loveland for Tyler Warren, Jack Bech in a round 2 pick in like week 3, and that's paid dividends for me, obviously. So, Bech is great. Just really good route runner. Not an exceptional athlete by any means. He's going to be more functional to an NFL team probably, but I think if he gets the right capital and falls in the right spot, you're looking at another kind of that Rashee Rice type role. Ty Felton, wide receiver, Maryland. Exciting player. If you want discounted Luther Burden, this is your guy. You're going to get him a whole round later. Plus, in fantasy drafts, NFL is going to be a round lower on him probably as well, maybe even 2. But he pretty much does the same thing. Gunnar Helm, tight end, Texas. I actually got onto him last year watching Jatavian Sanders tape. This dude is a freak of nature after the catch. Like, hilarious to watch. Completely clowns people after the catch. The route running took a little bit of a step forward this year. Again, he had Quinn Ewers at quarterback, so that sucks for him. But I think he's just another tight end. There's so many good tight ends. We didn't even get them all on this list. Dylan Sampson, running back, Tennessee. I'm a big Sampson guy. I think I'm, as of right now, from what I've seen, I'm probably the highest on Sampson than anybody. I think he's a significantly better player than Jalen Wright was.
Jacob, not on this podcast.
Good. Would you put out your draft guide and you have him higher than me? Let me know. I'll promote your work. Sure.
You're on the right podcast for Dylan Sampson love between me and Lucas.
Yeah, Sampson's another just like I got like Alvin Kamara vibes, and I'm not doing the same school comp, I promise you. But just kind of a slasher type.
Same number.
Did they really? Oh God.
Yeah, we're 6.
I got to find a new comp. Then I can't do the same school. Real slasher type, good, creative ability after his blockers. He's really good in the pass game. He's got enough juice to hit home runs. Actually, he's got several plays out running SEC cornerbacks in the open field. So I think he's got plenty of juice. 25, Aronde Gadsden II, tight end out of Syracuse. It's funny. There's sites out there listing him as a wide receiver, and I don't understand. I know he's a little light in the pants, like 235, 240 pounds, but he's 6'5", and he plays in line freaking half the time. It's not like some of these guys, they never play it. Like the North Carolina kid, Bryson Nesbitt.
Yeah.
He plays in the slot like 85% of the time. So I get calling him a slot receiver. Gadsden's in the inline position, like at least 50% of his snaps. So whatever. But this dude is an exceptional route runner, really good pass catcher. Sucks in the run game though. He could get Will Mallory treatment for sure. So I'm a little hesitant this high. Yeah, I know. Leave me alone. But I just love him. I had to put him on here just to pump him. It's the 25th guy, who
I think we need to play Mallory more. I never want to see Colin Granson on my screen again. I'm all here for more Mallory snaps.
Granson's on like a 4-game heater of awful right now.
Dude, Granson's on a 4-year heater of awful.
Well, there's been peaks and valleys, right? I feel like he'll do something to get your attention. The last 4 games have been, dude, horrible.
Colin Granson, I'm sure, is a lovely family man. I've been a diehard Colts fan since basically I watched football. I've never had more personal dislike for a player than Colin Granson. I just, part of it's just that the Colts' refusal to have a real tight end.
Yeah, it's weird.
Just causes me to get radicalized against whatever tight end is in front of me. But Colin Granson is 6'1.5", doesn't block anybody, and he can't catch a seam route. So I just don't really know what we do here. So anyway, sorry for the Colin Granson stray, but it's outrageous how much he's killing the team the last month.
There are 3 players not on this list that some people might think deserve to be. We don't have a lot of time to dive into them, but I just do want to know you have it. Assuming these following players don't enter the draft, you have Drew Allar, Jalen Milroe, and Evan Stewart as 3 guys you are assuming go back to school.
Yeah.
I can fall from grace for Evan Stewart. He was consensus 3 prior to the season.
And because of that, he might enter the draft. I don't know. It's kind of a lost season for him. Production was way down. He missed a bunch of games. So I would assume he comes back. That's been the trend lately. NFL teams aren't as scared of the senior receivers as they used to be.
No, they're not.
Perfect.
Make bank.
I think that, just good to note those players. Someone's gonna be like, well, they don't have so and so. Hopefully you stayed to the end because we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next time. This is the
Drew
board,
Allar's coming
Brett.
out, baby. Top 10. Let's go.
This is the first board, first set of tiers. We got T-Mac moving up, which we didn't expect, but hey, you talk it out and you have a different mindset, different look at this. We are gonna step away for a second. We'll come back. We're gonna do the game, final thoughts, and get out of here. Sit tight, won't be long. Do that. I got all the buttons clicked right on time. We're back here. Brett, we're a dynasty show, but we have egos. And with that, we like to do this game where we take a quarterback outside of the top 15, a running back outside of the top 15, a wide receiver outside of the top 30 because we are sickos, and a tight end outside of the top 20. We each pick a player within these range on PPR weekly projections, and we take those players, we tally their weekly points, we put it all into a total, and the winner of this game gets to pick the beverages consumed by the other co-hosts on the Fantasy Points live draft show last year. Jacob had us drinking pickleback shots while we were live on that broadcast, and I still haven't emotionally or mentally recovered. Jacob, you have been in the lead since like week 5, but Lucas has stormed back. We have Jacob in the lead at 837.76 PPR points. Lucas is at 739.06. I'm at a cool, calm, and very nice 669.02 points. And Ryan is at a 641.14. Get smoked. Scrub. Exactly. So, what was that? Brent,
How was Jacob so far ahead of everybody?
He had 3 straight
I
weeks
had
where he
1
went
week
deep
where I
tier.
hit the quarterback one, running back one, and wide receiver one.
And then
it was like, I don't know what happened, but like for 1 week I just touched God.
And every single week, like I'll have a 96-point week, and then Jacob will just have enough to stay ahead with like he'll have a 0 0 0 0.
Judy Monday night game, and that was
yeah. So every time we get closer, Jacob just does something insane. But Ryan's not here. I'll read off his picks. He's got Winston versus KC, Dowdle versus Carolina, Thielen versus Dallas, and Cade Otton versus LA. I need to take a big swing if I have hope. So I went Aaron Rodgers this week with the Jacksonville game. I'm pairing him with Garrett Wilson because hopefully Aaron Rodgers will decide to not alpha move, deliberately miss Garrett Wilson so he can prove to Garrett Wilson that he controls how much bread gets put into his bank account. I'm projecting here, but that's just something Aaron Rodgers would do. I'm going Brian Robinson because I feel like Washington is going to coast a little bit in this game. He is been really good all year. I like Brian Robinson to score and do a little more. And I'm pairing him with the tight end sensation, the guy that can't stop scoring 15 to 20 tight end premium points, going Zach Ertz because he's just been Mr. Consistent with Cliff Kingsbury. I need a big swing here. Lucas, what do you got?
All right. So for me right now, I'm being a little risky, but I have to at this point to try to catch Jacob. We're just running out of time. I would keep up with whatever I've been doing that's been good, but I have to swing for the fences here. So I'm going with Will Levis as my quarterback up against Cincinnati, which just gives up massive amounts of points. Then a little chalky with David Montgomery as my running back, taking a little bit of a swing with DeAndre Hopkins, hoping he's really working out of the slot because that's at least where Cleveland's giving up massive amounts of fantasy points to wide receivers. And then Mr. Kyle Pitts.
You've already lost.
That one hurt, but
you've already lost.
As good as Las Vegas is, as good as Las Vegas is at tight end with Brock Bowers, they give up so many points to tight ends that are split out wide. So I am hoping that this is the week. I am putting my bet on it.
Get ready to play with 3 players.
I got made fun of a lot. I got made fun of a lot whenever I put Bryce Young on this sheet. And I took it on that show, and then he had his best week of the entire year after that. So you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm making a huge comeback right now, so I need this.
I lost the final last week in an FFPC league by 0.25, which, again, to repeat, was because Xavier Worthy had a screen pass that was rescored as a rush. So I won and then lost.
Really not over that.
But Kyle Pitts was on that team, and every member of that team, except for Puka, who was the only reason it was close, is under immediate scrutiny. Kyle Pitts is not forgiven. I'm not taking Kyle Pitts. I'm taking Matt Stafford, who has been QB1 in the games that Puka has played this year. Taking Jonathan Taylor, who I thought looked the healthiest he's looked since the ankle injury against New England. Now he gets a bye week in the most important game of Indianapolis this season. This is essentially a playoff game this week. I'm taking Darnell Mooney, who is, just I guess is the number one wide receiver on the Atlanta Falcons, or at least he's number one in yards this year on the Atlanta Falcons over what did Brett call him earlier? The pumpkin, Drake London, the pumpkin. And I'll take Jawan Johnson, who is the only member of the New Orleans Saints who I'm confident will be on an NFL roster next year among their pass catchers. So that's probably a good sign for him.
What about league winner MVS, bro? Come on.
Not anymore.
Do we think Jake Hayner / Spencer Rattler is going to be throwing those deep seams to MVS? I don't know.
Rattler would with his YOLO ball mentality. Hayner would not.
Rattler would try. I don't know if he would succeed, but he's definitely giving it a shot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Man. That's going to do it for our program today. Brett, we like to do a little final thought, or obviously you feel free to plug whatever you want. Final thoughts on the show, final thoughts on your first look at the tiers. You said this isn't something you do on a regular basis. So do you have any final thoughts here for everybody before we get out of here?
I almost never translate my prospect takes to fantasy football. So I'm glad you guys are forcing me out of my comfort zone. It helps me think about things differently, and it will inevitably help my scouting process. So appreciate that. I would love to come back and do this again, or even just talk prospects as we get closer to the draft. You guys are awesome. I always love it. Even Lucas, who doesn't talk that much but should talk more because he always says good things.
Yes, we keep telling him that. There are times I literally have to DM him while we're live and like, can you move for me? Blink, Lucas. We need to shed the AJ Hawk moniker that is stowed upon Lucas. As much as our chat loves it,
I gotta get rid of that fast.
We gotta get rid of that. Yeah. I usually have an alternate overlay, Brett, where it says AJ Hawk over his name. The chat seems to love it. Lucas doesn't like it as much, but we're
it doesn't like being bullied.
He's the nicest human being on the planet. One of the genuinely nicest people. But again, that he's a man of the people. He does it for the chat. Look, this show was phenomenal. I'm glad we got the opportunity to do this with Brett Whitefield. You can catch everything he's doing. Obviously, fantasypoints.com, discounts galore, early bird special coming right around the corner, YouTube 25 and all that for even more discounts. You can get everything you need right there. Hopefully we can pull Brett into the Discord a little bit more, into the Dynasty Prospects channel that we created today. A couple thoughts, news and notes on that coming up. Love that. Lots of Dynasty content. Again, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, how can I help these guys and support them even more? Go to the Dynasty Points only feed where you will get the Dynasty Points market report on Friday, not Saturday morning. You get this show as well. And we have some bonus content coming into the off season as well. Again, you guys make Dynasty Points. Without you guys, we never even would have gotten into the door at Fantasy Points, let alone anywhere else we've managed to reach. It's been a great year for us. Couldn't have done that without all of you guys. With that being said, remember that fantasy football is a fun game. There's other people on the other side of your screens. Good luck and congratulations, that is, if you have made the playoffs. If not, don't worry. It's Dynasty. Your season's not over. We'll see you all the way through. Remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose in your best days. Goddamn. Sorry, it's been tilting. Good night, everybody.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.